John Paul I was elected Pope in 1978. What two features were groundbreaking about that name? I'll say that again. John Paul I was elected Pope in 1978. What two features were groundbreaking about this name?
Okay, who knows their Pope names?
Just a sec, did they call him the first?
I was going to say, isn't he the second?
Maybe he's the first one to become Pope after the Beatles and yet use their names. It's going to be my brilliance.
I'm glad someone made a Beatles joke. I was like, so there's going to be a Beatles joke in here somewhere. Where's it going to go? Right at the beginning. I love that for us.
But why would you call him the first if he was the first? Normally you don't number until there's been another. Like, you don't get, like, I don't know, King Henry the First won't have been called the first when he was the first.
I thought he was the second.
I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if you would be called the first, because you are the first one to be called. That doesn't strike me as odd, but now you're saying it, I'm thinking Elizabeth was the first, wasn't called Elizabeth I during her reign.
No, she was just called Elizabeth, and then...
Yeah, or good Queen Bess.
You only need to disambiguate when there's ambiguity. And if you're the
please
first...
put me out, I'm only a Catholic. But, yeah, no, I don't... is that a weird thing? Maybe that's one of the two weird things, then.
Unless they count from zero.
It is a zero-indexed
Pope.
Pope Ringo the Zeroth, yeah.
That must have been Paul, surely. He must have been Pope Zero.
Pope Zero sounds like a Catholic sugar-free drink.
Diet Pope as well.
It's the holy water. It's sugar-free.
Diet Pope's more for the girls and
Yes.
Pope Zero for the boys.
Yes, yeah. Matt, you have got one of the groundbreaking features.
What?
John Paul I was called the First.
Who's John Paul II? I'm confused now.
I'm both intrigued as to the why, and also... This is continuing my streak of making a joke and getting it right. Also, Abby, yes, if there's a second, there will be a second, but that implies there was a first.
I know, but I thought his name was John Paul II. That's why I'm confused. People right now are either in the comments of YouTube or TikTok being like, Abby's so stupid. And you know what, guys, you're right. Like,
Were you thinking the second was part of his name?
No, I just thought that there was... That our Polish John Paul Pope, who, Pope Mobile, we love him, all that jazz, before we had the German Pope and then Francis, and now we have the Chicago Pope.
Which sounds like a TV show.
It probably will be at some point.
It actually was. It was Chicago Hope, and it was about a hospital, wasn't it? That's why my brain fired off there.
Chicago Hope, Chicago Pope, it's fine. So no, I'm just genuinely confused. But
this was 1978, so I'm assuming this was the John Paul before the most recent John Paul.
Yeah, it must be, because there was definitely one before that, surely.
And because this guy's called the first, and the most recent one was called the second.
Is he the first one with a Pope mobile?
I'm going to put you all out of your
well.
confusion and misery here. John Paul I was elected Pope in 1978. He died after 33 days in office.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I was confused.
And his successor was Pope John Paul II, which is the one that I think everyone here is going to recognise from...
JP2.
I am not a terrible Catholic.
So did they know? Did they elect him knowing that, he's on his way out? So we'll elect him John Paul I, and then John Paul II can come next.
It's claimed that at the time he was just not aware that including the first was unusual, because the predecessors all had numbers. And he was the first John Paul, so I'll be John Paul I. You
get to pick your name as Pope, don't you? Because the current Pope isn't called, I don't know, Jeff Chicago, whatever he was called before now.
You do as king as well. You get to pick your name, because everybody was saying that Charles III wouldn't be called Charles III because of what happened to Charles I. And but he went with it.
But I mean, at least Charles II was jazzy.
I mean...
full of diseases. But.
You've identified one of the two strange things. I think the more difficult thing to point out there.
Okay.
What might be the other strange thing about John Paul I's name?
My thought was you said groundbreaking, and I like Popes kiss the ground or something like that, but you just implied that it was actually his name that was the...
It is actually the name, yeah.
So the name is groundbreaking. Nobody double-barrel their name before him?
Nobody double-barreled their name before him. He was the first... Well, it's not going to hyphen, but he was the first pope to have two names.
There you go. And ironically, an extra bit where it's the third bit, which was called the first.
Yeah.
So technically, he had 3 names, if that's not what the first usually does.
Oh, yeah, it was just
greedy.
John Paul the First. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to confuse matters.
Like
Well, that's
Right,
having
so-
a middle name's a Roman thing as well, isn't it?
I don't know.
They certainly mixed up their names a lot, the Romans. So they added bits. Like Julius Caesar wasn't called Julius Caesar, for example, which is just annoying.
Jizzle sizzle to his friends.
Yeah, Jezza.
Pope John Paul I chose his name in honour of his 2 predecessors, John the 23rd and Paul the 6th.
23rd.
23rd! There's a lot of Pope Johns.
He is claiming that is for his benefit. That is not for his benefit. He wanted to be number 1, didn't he? And it wasn't going to be number 24 or number 7. That's rubbish. So he wanted to be number 1. That's why he did it.
And then he was like, I'm going to die now. I've made my impact.
Boom.
So yes, he was the first pope to have a double name and the first pope to be called the First. The Lateral Producers Club is at lateralcast.com if you would like more Lateral, fewer adverts, and to support the show.